was really post school. School, were too busy playing games when you weren't working. And as an undergraduate, I went to, as a visiting scholar, to Florence University, the heart of the Renaissance period, and the wealth of the city-states in Florence financed the art that blossomed from late 1200, 1300. And it just was fantastic. And I liked it as a means of understanding culture, giving you hints, clues about history, which is why if you give me a chance to talk about modern art and how that will help, I have a different opinion, because I don't believe it can continue in the same fantastic way as it has. So that was really the interest. And then more recently living near the Fitzwilliam Museum, because we've only had 2 universities in this country for 600-700 years, and the art that was available by gift or acquisition, it went to the Fitzwilliam or the Ashmolean at Oxford. So it's that combination of Florence and Cambridge. Well, how do museums play a part in education generally? Well, it's only a recent thing, really, that in Cambridge you couldn't study history of art until 1970. It was not thought worthy of discussion, of study. It should be mathematics or the classics or sciences. So it's interesting that should have been the case. And actually, it was a German called Winckelmann in the 1700s who wrote the first history of art of Greece and Athens, classical work, and it's became more respectable since then. So it's quite recently, but the history of museums is quite interesting in Europe, because it started off probably the same in your country with priests of religion. Your case, Taoists, Buddhists, our case, Christian, who had the intellect, the time and the interest and the wealth to collect artifacts. And the monasteries were replaced in some sense in our country by the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge. So in the long vacation, Cambridge and Oxford went to sleep. Now, largely through visiting Chinese, they're busier than ever, but for centuries nothing was done. So they travelled and they went to Greece and they wandered around Mount Olympus and tried to dig up and find and bring back artifacts. So the college libraries became our museums, because, as you know, we got rid of our monasteries in this country around 1500 when we changed Christian religion. Then we went to a period of private museums. Oxford, Elias Ashmole was a private individual who started the University of Oxford Museum. We had the British Museum, started by a man called Hans Sloane. If you go to London, you can still see Hans Street and Sloane Square and all these places. And the Fitzwilliam was started by an aristocrat, Viscount Fitzwilliam. He left his art to the university, on which, hence the name Fitzwilliam Museum, when he died in 1816. So we had that private museum phase. So you had monasteries, college libraries, private museums, and then we went to a national museum phase. In the 1850s, as a rich country, we built museums like the Victoria and Albert, like the National History Geographic Museum. So we've moved now to a public museum, National Gallery in Trafalgar Square. Interestingly, and it reflects money, America is still in the private museum phase. You think of the Mellon and the Getty and all these private museums, and I think in China it's happening too, because you have rich individuals, very rich at the top, they buy art, then they realize they're going to die, and it's a way of making their name last and become a memorial. And that's the thing about art. Art follows the money. When you come to our museums, there's a lot of art from 1800. We were top dog. We could afford to buy the art. America became rich. The art goes there, and now it's your country. Art follows the money. Nothing wrong with that. But you can see these different experiences anyway. Most heated at the moment, I don't know, but to me, I think looking back at history, one of the topics of art is it truthful or not? Because you've got, for example, a picture in Cambridge by Hubei the Younger, a North German in the 1530s who lived in England, and he painted a very famous picture of Henry VIII, our big fat king who had 6 wives and killed most of them. And the original's been burnt in the late 1600s, and one of the best copies is in Trinity College. And he looks a magnificent man, slim-waisted, long-legged, good looking, and the rest of it. And then they've found, and it was painted at the end of his life, as it happens, 1545, 46. Then they found some armour, the metal armour that aristocrats and knights wore in battle. And they can see from the battle armour that obviously reflected his true shape. Nothing like that. Much fatter, short-legged, this, that, and the other. So is truth coming out of the art? I think is personally one of the most important things. And there's another comment, Oscar Wilde, that wonderful, recommend him to your listeners, humorous writer from the early 1900s who was homosexual and persecuted because of that, but he was very clever and amusing. And one of the things I liked about that was he wrote that the mysterious loveliness of fog was never apparent until painters painted it. So what is real and what is made up? Because if you're in the middle of fog, it's not interesting, it's just bad. But when an artist paints it and paints it beautifully, you've then got a new dimension. So is truth and reality, are they lost in painting? That, I think, is one of the key things.